Welcome to One in the Trenches podcast. I'm Johnny Jones. This is Patches Kaplan. Where do you want to start today, Patch?
Johnny, welcome back. Viewers,
Yes.
welcome back. We both had an okay week.
Okay.
Only 5 games to pick of last week.
Yep.
We had Utah versus Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
LSU versus Florida, Mizzou versus South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, BYU, Kansas. You went 1 for 5, Johnny.
Yeah,
Brings
not
your
good.
total up to 39 for 85.
Yeah.
I went 2 for 5, batting at 40%. Still losing at 46 for 85. So I'm barely hanging my head on a positive ROI. You hit your cheesecake bet of the week. They were +8, ended up winning by 8.
Yeah,
So a
huge.
16-point swing. Good for you.
Cal McCord. He's like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, man. One day he shows up.
You're
those
riding his
5 picks.
coattails right now.
Yeah, no, him in Illinois have been riding to the promised land. I feel like I've been so bad picking regular games, but these cheesecake picks I've been really feeling it
Yeah, you're
lately.
killing those like mid 5 to 8 pointers. It's kind of crushing me. So you are currently at 26 points for that. I'm at 18 points. You have a nice little lead. You will not have a lead after this week. To jump into it, obviously we had a college football show on Tuesday night.
Yes.
Would you say chaos ensued yet, or is it gearing up? I feel like all I'm hearing around is the conversations. Have you ever heard of the foot in the door theory, Johnny, when selling anything? Where you throw something out there, just to get your foot in the door, right? Something that's pretty easy for them to say yes to. Once they say yes, they can say another yes, and so on and so forth. I've already heard rumors of if Indiana loses tomorrow, they don't make the playoff.
The thing is, I don't know if this is true.
Saturday.
I've heard it on a lot of podcasts, but Greg Sankey, he's a commissioner of the SEC. It really seemed like he called all of his guys in the media, and it was like a planned hit on Indiana this week because like every media outlet's trashing Indiana, and it's like I think that's kind of shitty because like Indiana can only win the games on their schedule, and they've been crushing teams. So I think as long as they don't get embarrassed this week, they're in.
Like imagine if Ohio State somehow, some way scheduled this, and the only big game of the year was Oregon, right? Like everyone would be saying, "Oh, they've dominated teams, right?" They had the one close game against Michigan, which is Michigan's not a terrible team like they were in the beginning of the year. They're better now. Coach Sharon called a terrible game. Had some really mess ups there in the end where he just let the clock run out, and Indiana basically just ran it for a first down at the end of the game. But if this was any other team, if you look at other schedules that for teams that are not getting doubted, they're just as easy, Johnny, right?
Yeah.
Penn State's, that's what happens when you get a massive, massive conference. Penn State's is a very easy conference or a very easy schedule. Texas had a very easy schedule.
The thing with the Big Ten is it's so top heavy like that. Like those 4 teams, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana, I think are very good. But that bottom half sucks. But I think what's kind of getting overlooked is like, let's have this conversation next week when we see how Indiana goes out and what they do against Ohio State. Because right now I have no sympathy for a lot of these 2-loss SEC teams because I get it's a gauntlet. But if you look at the resumes, a couple of these teams have lost to below average teams. Like I've got.
That's why I think this. Those SEC teams losses almost nullify Notre Dame's loss to NIU. And I know that sounds crazy, but in a world where teams are getting in at very high rankings with 2 losses, you have to argue at some point a 1-loss team.
No, 100%. Especially when you look at the resumes, like these teams have great wins, and you have to take that into account. But like Tennessee, they lost to an average Arkansas team. Bama to Vanderbilt, and Ole Miss to a Kentucky and LSU. Both, dude, LSU's been trending so poorly lately that like those are 2 bad losses. And the thing is, at some point, we have to reward Indiana for winning and not losing, especially when these teams like if all those teams had just lost to like a top 5 team, that's one thing. But it's like they lost to average to below average team. Yeah. So.
Yeah, you could argue that like Arkansas is very similar to Michigan. Or Arkansas is very similar to Michigan State, Maryland, Rutgers.
And guess what? Indiana won those games.
Exactly.
Penn State won those games.
Because Indiana doesn't have a key win, and it's unfortunate because the odds that you would get a key win in the Big 12 or the Big 10 are super thin this year because, like you said, it is so top heavy.
Yeah,
there's really nothing you can do unless you schedule the Big 3.
And the tough thing is, like, I think a lot of people in the media right now come after like Oregon and Ohio State for like Ohio State's game versus Nebraska and Oregon's game against Boise or Oregon's game against Wisconsin. It's like, why are we starting to tear teams down for winning close games when we're pushing these 2-loss SEC teams up who lost those games? Like, they didn't finish the deal and lost those games. But yeah, Oregon struggled against Wisconsin. But at the end of the day, they won, whereas these other teams haven't finished the deal. But yet we're going to punish these teams for winning close games. I think that's crazy.
Yeah, I have to question like how good some of these wins are. Like Ole Miss beating Georgia, I was like, good for Ole Miss. They stormed the field. Lane Kiffin gets his first key win. Is this the same Georgia that got shut out in the first half against Bama?
No,
is this the same Georgia that got who else did Georgia get dominated by?
Georgia right now has lost to Bama and Ole Miss, and their wins are Clemson, Texas, and Tennessee.
Yeah, no, it's just it is crazy because it's like, you know, if you're saying
Kentucky, you're thinking of Kentucky. They had a very tight win against Kentucky.
Yes. Like, is that the game? Like, which version are you basing your win off of? Because if you're saying, oh, this is a team that took Kentucky into the last possession to beat them, or it's a team that dominated Texas in the first half, or completely got smoked by Bama in the first half, excuse me. You know, I have to question the legitimacy of how good these wins are. Does anyone have that good of a win this year? I would say the best win is Oregon's.
Yeah, wait, breaking news. I got to just interrupt the podcast. I just got an update on my phone just because this is college football. Michigan, they put the NIL together. They raised like millions of dollars. They flipped Bryce Underwood, the number one quarterback recruit from LSU to Michigan.
No way.
Breaking news. You know, and
what site is that, Johnny?
What?
What
no, I got Bleacher Report. ESPN just reported Bryce Underwood. Now, there've been whispers of this coming, and I think what really
$10.5 million for 3 years is crazy.
And I think that and all, but the LSU's all definitely offering that kid a lot of money. I think it's also LSU. I think it's both a lot of money and LSU just trending so poorly. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just saw that.
That's absolutely nuts. I think that is going to absolutely positively heat up Brian Kelly's seat if they don't win out and they have a hard schedule moving forward. You know, I think it has to be said with how bad that they have been outperformed. You know, that game against Bama a couple weeks ago was inexcusable. Them following that up with a loss against Florida, a very tough, hard-nosed Florida team, just something that Brian Kelly cannot lose. And he doesn't even have like an easy strip, right? Like he could drop Vanderbilt. He could drop Oklahoma.
No, especially Vanderbilt, like Diego Pavia, like they've dropped games, but he's always live in a game. I'm so sick about Nussmeier. I thought he was really good. Can you tell me the first 5 games he looked really?
He was throwing at like 92% completion rate.
And then I don't know what happened. And then it's like the whining of Brian Kelly on the sideline, ripping his players, ripping the refs.
I don't know what it is. There's certain coaches that can get on their players, and I'm like, oh, good for them. But when Brian Kelly does it, he just looks like a whiny little bum.
No, he does. And
I don't know what it is. Like Nick Saban could go after his players for anything, and like I've seen it like day in and day out, like coaches getting in fights with players on the sideline. But like when Brian Kelly does it, I'm just like soft.
It's so soft. So soft.
So like I'm so mentally weak. Like You know, and that's so crazy. I love the fact that they're not in the playoffs. Right now, our 16 playoff contention for the SEC, right? We have Oregon, we have Georgia, we have Tennessee, we have Bama, we have Texas. Would you say A&M and
I'd say A&M and Ole Miss.
Yes.
But I'd say A&M I'd say A&M just because of that. Their 2 losses, LSU? No, sorry. South Carolina and Notre Dame. But they've got that end of the season game against Texas, where if they can beat Texas end of the season, I think.
Well, they're going to be in the SEC championship if they beat them, and then no matter what, win and loss, they're in.
But then you get in that weird debate about do you get punished for losing the SEC championship game?
It's crazy. That'll be the worst case scenario is if they beat Texas and they get in, because that means that 5 teams are going to get in from the SEC, right? Yeah. They got to take a 3-loss. They're most likely a 3-loss Texas A&M team.
Yep.
Then you got to follow that up with the winner of the SEC. That's 2.
Yep.
Which then you have to follow that up with most likely Ole Miss, Georgia, and/or Tennessee, and Texas are in. But I would have to argue that if Texas loses to A&M,
yep,
they have no right being in the playoff.
No, I agree to that. Yeah.
Like they have not their schedule is almost more unimpressive than
they have no win.
Well, the thing that pisses me off, Johnny, and I'm not going to call you out here, but I am at the same time, is where you keep saying, "Oh, we're waiting to see what Indiana does against Ohio State." Did you say that about Texas?
No, I shouldn't. And
No, it's so weird that Indiana's only held to this if they lose by X amount standard. Where no one was saying this for Ohio State, that or even Penn State. Penn State's got a super soft schedule just like Indiana. No one was like, oh, if they lose by 17 or 25 or 31 against Ohio State, they don't deserve to be in. Even if they did, Penn State would still be talks of getting in.
Yeah.
It's quite weird because it's only Indiana when there's other teams in this top 12, top 15
just because
that have such easy schedules.
They're the new guy at the party, and it sucks, and it shouldn't be that way, but that's how it's going to be.
Yeah. I hate how I have so much bias towards Indiana just because I have a massive bet that would literally change my life. But it's hard not to fight it. I am also a very big contradictory person in terms of the playoffs. I evaluate losses way too well. When I say you should not evaluate losses, you should only evaluate wins.
You love
when it's my team, I talk about losses a lot.
You love a team that loses. Matt Pittman texted me the other day. He goes, Patches, man, when I listen on the pod, he loves a team that loses a game. Teaches you something.
I'll argue losses till the day I die because it's not a perfection sport anymore, Johnny.
No,
it's not like when you and
That's
I were in middle school, you
had
to go 12-0.
I love that because it's like teams like South Carolina that get good at the end of the season. It's like those are teams that are built for the playoff. And South Carolina probably won't get it because they lost a soft one, but I really think that's kind of the future of college football. You want to recap last week's games, or do you want to get into some blind resume?
Yeah, we can talk about them. Let's talk about them quickly here.
Yeah,
because we've already touched into them. So we had Utah, Colorado. Colorado dominated Utah. They're making me more and more nervous. I think they're a massive favorite now to win the Big 12. They went out, they're in. If not, they're obviously not going to get in with 2 losses. We look at, let's see here. I'm pulling up the odds.
Do you want to go into Georgia, Tennessee? Oh, no, you want to keep talking. The thing about that game was it kind of makes me sad when Utah's bad because I like Kyle Whittingham. And
I just don't really know what happened this year.
I just think they hung their hat on Cam Rising, and that just kind of never worked out. And they had their defense didn't look good this week, but they do have a good defense. But they just couldn't score enough points this year.
Colorado is still the pick to win it. They're minus 125. BYU is plus 330. So bet bet $1, win $3.30. Plus your dollar back. Colorado, you have to bet $1.25 to win $1. So it's pretty tight. The LSU Florida game, that quarterback they have down in Florida is really talented.
He's good. He might be the reason Billy Napier's coming back.
I told you at the beginning of the season, it's going to take one of those wins to secure his job. Obviously, he secured it about a week and a half too early, or a week and a half earlier than I thought. But, I think he can also throw in a wrench this week with Ole Miss. Ole Miss is not a juggernaut that they're making them seem out, right? They got smoked by Kentucky, and then they got beat by LSU. Both are really mid teams. When you lose 2 losses, when you have 2 losses like that, it's not hard to find ways to beat you.
Well, think about how much weight people are putting on that one against Georgia. And Georgia's a really weird team because when Georgia plays their best, they look like the best team in the country, but they don't always play their best. And Carson Beck sometimes just wakes up and decides to throw 3 picks like he did against Ole Miss, and they got worked by Ole Miss.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this Ole Miss team so weird because that Kentucky LSU loss is really bad, but that Georgia win, that's what everyone's hanging their hat on. So they could go out there, lay an egg, and lose to Georgia, and lose to Florida, then they're out.
Yeah, I mean, 11 points just seems like it's a lot. Mizzou, South Carolina, I've got to be fully transparent. I haven't seen the highlights on this game yet. I heard it was absolutely nuts. South Carolina was up 21 points. Yeah. Mizzou comes back, takes the lead in a minute and a half, and then South Carolina somehow muscles a way through. Mizzou might be the, instead of coach of the year, they should give disappointing coach of the year.
Yeah.
Not Kirk Ferentz. Eli Drinkowitz should be on that list.
Oh, no, 100%. No, and South Carolina trending in the right direction, but just kind of at a couple too many losses like that.
Yeah, a little bit. What is it? A little bit too little, too late.
A little too late. 3 SEC losses is going to kill them, and that sucks because I think there'd be a really I think there'd be a team that people wouldn't want to play in the playoff right now.
Are you changing your opinion at all about Tennessee, Johnny? I know last week we talked about how stout their defense was, and
I still think their defense is really good. I just don't think they can get enough out of that offense, and I think Nico is just too young. Yeah, and I still think they have a really good chance at making the playoff. But I don't think they can score enough, and they kind of got that second half was bad. Like they went up 10-0. I was like,
Yeah.
damn, this Tennessee team, this defense will travel. Special teams is great. Offensively, can they do enough? And it looked like they could that first quarter, and then man, they just kind of
Yeah, Athens was bumping. I knew it would be close. I was a little bit caught off guard. I thought Tennessee got outcoached, which I hate to see because I think they're the better team. I think Georgia's just so inconsistent, and they'll get exposed in the playoffs. And it's one of the things our listeners can make a lot of money on betting against Georgia because they're going to be favored if and when they make the playoffs. I think they're like minus 3,000 to make the playoffs. Bet 3,000, win 100. That they're going to be so heavily favored, right? Like if they get Indiana, if they get Penn State, just because they're Georgia and they're the SEC caliber, and they're the next Nick Saban's Bama, and against Penn State, I wouldn't be surprised if we got a 9-point favorite for Georgia. But in reality, they should be close to 3 points.
And I'd take Penn State there, or I'd probably take Indiana just because I think Carson Beck is so inconsistent, and you never know if you're going to get their A game. And they really got the run game going against Tennessee, and that kind of carried them in that second half. But I don't know if they're going to be able to do that every single week because they haven't been all season.
No, they haven't, and I don't know if they can run consistently. They have Etienne, who's a really good running back, but I just don't think that they're going to be able to produce the offensive power to keep up with a team that can move the ball really well, can put up turnovers or get turnovers and put up points off those turnovers.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So I was very surprised by that. They won by 14, 31-17. Home field advantage played a really big play. BYU Kansas was past my bedtime, but it was a kind of a crazy game.
Yeah.
What happened at the end of the game, Johnny?
It was also past my bedtime, but I just think Kansas is another team. They're a worse version of South Carolina where they're trending in the right direction. A couple losses too late, but Leipold's a great coach. They're playing good football, and I think BYU consistently has been playing with fire. It's kind of like Miami. They're just playing in these close games. They just couldn't pull the magic out of the hat late in that game.
So some other scores just to mention. We had Penn State dominates Washington 35-6. Was
Purdue.
Oh, geez. I am
week behind. Yeah, it was Purdue.
Yep, there it is. So we have Clemson beats Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is doing the exact opposite of Kansas and South Carolina, trending downward. Texas plays a really tight game against Arkansas. I bet Texas, I think, minus 12. Arkansas played them really, really well. Tulane shuts out Navy.
Tulane looks really good right now.
They do. They're the big-time favorite to win the AAC. SMU dominates BC. Notre Dame dominates Virginia. Lets up 2 touchdowns late, but went up 28-0 like it was a peewee football game, like what my high school would have done against yours.
Oh, sure. Small New Hampshire school.
Yeah, I would have pulled laid you right on your bum, dude.
No,
Arizona State beat
chop block's legal in Mass. We're chopping you every play.
Chop blocking is?
It just got banned like last year, but for the longest time, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Texas, only 3 states that let you chop block.
Savages.
We would have chopped your ass.
We have Oregon, Wisconsin. Were you ever nervous in that game?
Yes, I was nervous. I was 1,000% nervous.
Were you just nervous? Like, hey, I think people, these in-conference games where you have an elite team like Oregon in a middle-of-the-pack team like Wisconsin, everyone's writing off these middle-of-the-pack teams, but we've seen it in the past where these teams can upset them. And I'm not saying Wisconsin's a better team than Oregon, and I'm not saying Oregon's a bad team because of this game. People are selling out these Big Ten teams way too quickly.
Way too fast. And I think, especially in the first half, Wisconsin has a great run game. Their offense is kind of incompetent at times, but they ran the ball. Camp Randall was bumping. Late night Saturday night game. Also, Oregon, this was their 8th straight conference game. That was the longest streak in the nation of conference.
Oregon's?
Yeah, without a bye. They're on a bye this week. They were just tired. I think their running back was actually on load management.
Yeah.
But they didn't look good. Oregon's weird because kind of saw it against Boise, kind of saw it against Idaho. They don't really get up for these games, and Dylan Gabriel wasn't firing at first. They got him when they needed it to, but then they show up for big games like Ohio State. I don't know. I think they'll be fine come the playoff. I think they're way too talented of a team.
Yeah, I don't mind these types of wins, Johnny.
I don't either.
It goes to show that, hey, you not only can win the big ones, you can also win the unexpected ones where you have to somehow pull it out of a horseshoe. And the one I'm going to revert back to, and you would have been in high school. Do you remember against your senior year, 2016? UNH goes down to Holy Cross. We open up the new stadium, Wildcat Stadium.
Yeah.
You might have been at the game.
Yeah, I was at the game. Yeah.
And we go down against Holy Cross, a team that we're historically better than. In the last 6 years, I would say it's a little bit different. But 2016, we were historically better than any Patriot team. And they go up 20-0.
Yeah.
And we ended up winning. They ended up not scoring again. We won like 42-20. And it's just one of those teams or one of those games where you just have to like reset, regather yourself.
Find a way to win.
You can't look too much into this win because it's a win, but it's just one of those things. I like that win out of them. I thought it was wicked gritty. I thought they stayed calm. That defensive line is something to be scared of.
No, they're so good. Mateo Uegalege and Jordan Birch and Harmon, they're great. I also think that's a gritty win in a year where a lot of teams have losses. Like right now, going into this week, only Oregon, Indiana, and Army, the only undefeated teams. Like you see a lot of teams dropping games like that.
Yeah.
And so it's just good to see Oregon win in a way they're kind of not used to.
Yeah, I hope Oregon is able to turn it back on, though, because they'll have – who do they have the rest of the year? They're going into the SEC championship, the Big Ten.
Who do they have? I'll look it up right now. I did want to say one thing was Oregon. The last couple of weeks they have been without Tez Johnson, like their best receiver.
I didn't know that.
He's an absolute stud. He's been out the past couple of weeks with a rib injury. He is playing this week, so I think that's a huge get for them. They're on bye. They have a bye this week, and then they just one last game. They close the season with Washington, who doesn't look that good, and it's revenge for last year.
Yeah, that's fair. And then they'll go into the Big Ten championship against Ohio State.
They're automatically in the Big Ten championship. I don't know how that works, but they
they're.
I guess unless Indiana won.
How are they in? Because Indiana beat Washington. Well, I guess
know.
If Ohio.
I saw Oregon's.
Even if Ohio State wins, they're still not.
I don't know. I saw Oregon's social media accounts post.
They're all over it, which I love. They're basically locked themselves into the playoffs. Obviously, they're going to take the first or second in the Big Ten. I'm curious into what position they can get into the if they drop a game against Ohio State. If it's a really close one, they'll obviously get 5. But what happens, Johnny? Like we've never even talked about this. If Ohio State somehow goes out there, or vice versa, right? This is interchangeable. Oregon beats them by 21. Ohio State beats them by 21, right? Do they not have the lock at 5?
Like no, I don't know if they have the lock at 5, but I think they'd be in no matter what, those two teams.
No, I for sure think they're in. But I'm just saying in my head, like, we've always said the winner of the Big Ten is going to be 1. In the second place runner-up of the Big Ten is going to be 5. But if they get absolutely dominated, if Ohio State gets absolutely dominated by Oregon by 21 points.
I don't think you can drop them below Indiana and Penn State because they beat those teams. You know what I mean?
It gets really choppy. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, like, 2 SEC teams at 5 and 6, and then, Indiana, Penn State, Ohio State at 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
Which would be crazy. With the setup that the playoffs in now, the 5 is cooking to the semifinals.
The 5's in a really good spot, assuming you beat the 12.
Yeah.
The
12, which would most likely be who was it last week?
Right now, 12. Right now, 12's Boise, but the thing is, what could very well happen is you could kind of catch a pretty good 2-loss SEC team at the 12, which would be scary.
Yeah, that would be intimidating. And
but
so
if
we had I'm just pulling it up here because I thought Boise got the 4, Johnny. Yeah, they did. So right now BYU got the 12. Like imagine that you would have BYU, which Ohio State would be a 25-point favorite against.
Yep.
You'd have Boise, who Ohio State would be a 17-point favorite against, and then you're in the semifinals.
No, that's a good run right there.
That's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting. Josh Payne talked a little bit about the spreads of this hypothetical college football bracket as it sits. Just to remind our listeners, we have in bracket order, right? Like where you ranked in the bracket, not your
Yeah.
actual rankings, which is a super confusing concept that gets me every single week, is that we have Oregon at 1, Texas at 2, Miami at 3, Boise at 4. We have 5 is Ohio State, 6 is Penn State, 7 is Indiana, 8 is my Irish, 9 is Bama, 10 is Ole Miss, 11 is Georgia, 12 is BYU. He said that, and I don't know if these are hypothetical numbers, but he said that
Yeah.
his that FanDuel that had the SEC matchups, so Bama, Notre Dame, Indiana, Ole Miss, Georgia, Penn State, and that's it. We're all favored between 1.5 to 3.5 points in a hypothetical neutral field matchup right now.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. I think that Penn State should be won't be, but should be a favorite against Georgia in
100%. I think they should. I think Carson Beck hasn't played consistent enough.
Indiana, Ole Miss would be a tough matchup. I think Ole Miss would get their number there. There's just a really good defensive line. I think they get after the quarterback a little bit. They also, I don't know. I'm curious what Indiana's able to do. We're going to talk a whole bunch in a few minutes about Indiana, Ohio State, but the Alabama-Notre Dame one was interesting. I'm very excited because Notre Dame plays a very good Army team this year, and I know they're kind of sizzling off on the playoffs talk. They're kind of sizzling off a little bit because they had some tougher wins. Exact same thing. They won the game. They're undefeated, but everyone's just doubting them because their wins weren't that impressive.
Yeah.
But, Notre Dame's in a good spot to finally get a win against this team, an undefeated team, knock them out of the playoff contention, knock them out of undefeated, and then go into USC. Where I'm going with that is Notre Dame is kind of screwed in terms of getting themselves another key win. That the better a team looks, the better Notre Dame will look when they beat them.
It's tough right now for them because they were kind of relying on Louisville finishing strong, which they're not. And Louisville and Texas A&M both are trending in a downwards right now. So they don't really have that. Texas A&M could be Texas, and that could be a signature win. But right now they don't have a very signature win. Which
LSU wins looking worse and worse.
No, yeah, like there's a lot of teams on that that have kind of trended poorly.
All right, so before blind resume.
Yes. So this segment, I'm gonna throw some blind resumes at you. You tell me, like this, like in this situation, we got last spot in the playoff, 12 spot, only one team can make it. You tell me who you'd put in the playoff between the two.
How many resumes are you gonna give me?
I've got 3 different head-to-head matchups. I'm gonna give you 2 resumes. I'll tell you who their biggest losses are against, who their biggest wins are against, and then you tell me what team you'd put in.
This is tough though, Johnny, because I feel like in the weirdest sense, the first 11 teams getting announced influences the 12th.
No, I know. But whatever spot it might be, just say who would you rank above you rank above?
And am I saying who should be in or who is going to win?
No, just who should be in the playoff.
Okay, all right.
So not who's going to win, who should be in the playoff.
Because this opens up the debate that you and I have had since college.
Yes.
What is in? What deserves to be in? Is it this happened last year? They clearly gave us an answer. It is not the most deserving team. It is the best team.
Yeah.
And that is how I'm going to give my answer to anyone who's listening. I'm going to give my answer over who I think is the better team, not the more deserving team. So
blind resumes, I'm going to give you the losses, their losses, and I'm going to give you the wins. But when I give you the wins, it's only going to be teams that were ranked when they played. They might not be ranked now, but when they played, they were ranked.
Yep.
The first one.
The losses with Team A.
Team A, losses. Kentucky, LSU. Win against Georgia. And I can give you how much they lost by. 2 close losses. Kentucky, LSU, they beat Georgia.
Were they at home, Johnny? I know who this team is, but I can't remember.
I didn't write that down. My bad.
Okay. Team B. Losses.
Team B. Losses to Tennessee and Vandy. Wins, Georgia, Mizzou, LSU. This is the only one that's the same conference. The next 2 will be 2 different conferences.
Ooh, that's tough. That is tough. I know these 2 teams.
The 2 teams, but if you just look at
my snap reaction.
Yes.
Right? Snap reaction.
Ole Miss.
Is Ole Miss. But when you look at it like this, Johnny, the Tennessee loss is a lot better of a loss, right? You see me doing the quotations, a lot better of a loss than both Kentucky and LSU.
Both their losses, because you could compare Vandy and LSU to two similar teams right now, the way LSU has looked.
You can't compare Kentucky and Tennessee.
And then the Tennessee loss is better than Kentucky, but Ole Miss's win against Georgia, they both beat Georgia, and that win against Georgia was so dominant. But then Bama beat LSU and Ole Miss lost to LSU, so it's like very hard.
That is really, really tough. You know, I think that,
and that could be very realistic. Like who makes a playoff?
Crazy, and I know this sounds absolutely nuts. The reason I'm going to go with Team A over Team B,
yes,
is if you look at their biggest win, right? In Team A, Ole Miss's instance, it is Georgia. In Team B's instance, it is also Georgia.
Yeah.
Which was a better win, in my opinion?
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss, right? Like it was dominated from start to finish. While in my head, when I think back on that night in September, Bama essentially lost that game.
No, and it's very interesting you said this because like it comes down to the age-old question, what's better? What are we judging like on a higher scale, like wins or losses? And I feel like you've always been a loss guy, but in this case you judged wins because Ole Miss's win against Georgia is better than Bama's win against Georgia, but Bama has better losses than Ole Miss.
Very much. And I don't think that Tennessee's as good of a team as people are making it out to be. So I think that like Tennessee, while ranked and while I think they made the play, did they make the playoff bracket this week? No.
Tennessee right now is ranked 11th. So yeah, they are.
They are. So, but I think that they could lose against Vanderbilt, which would be the ultimate equalizer in that sense. But I really don't think that that loss is overly impressive. Isn't the right word? Isn't all that rewarding?
Yeah.
That loss against Tennessee was very uneventful. I think that Bama has looked underwhelming at times. I think that their key wins at LSU, shit, this is where I struggle because that win at LSU was so convincing that if you said, hey, this team dominated LSU, right? A dominated B, C lost to B. Who's A?
It's like a math equation. It's so tough.
You know, I'd have to argue that in this case, both of these teams would have to be in. I would have.
Okay,
I would see a scenario where they get out. I would say that they would have to say that so even they would have to kick a different team.
I think they're both in. I agree with you there. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Yeah.
Okay, Team A. Losses to Georgia and Louisville.
Georgia
in no ranked wins.
Huh.
Team B. Losses to Kansas State and Nebraska. Also no ranked wins.
That's tough. That's tough because you when you are thinking about it, Johnny, where does your head immediately go on a successful season?
What do you mean?
It's so tough. If you're saying like, oh, they had a really good season, is it because they beat really good teams?
Well, they had a really good record.
Yeah. You know, it's tough because, you know, South Carolina is in that exact instance where they've beat really good teams.
Yeah.
And they don't have a great record. So, but I would consider South Carolina having a great season, one of the best that I remember.
So you probably know who these two teams are.
Yes, we have Clemson and we have Colorado. I guess I didn't realize that Colorado had no ranked wins.
No, well, at least the time they played, none of those. Yeah, I can go through it, but
did Colorado beat Arizona State?
I don't think they played.
So they'll possibly see each other in the finals.
It depends with BYU and stuff, but like the thing is, like Kansas State hasn't looked good. So
no, they haven't. So that's getting worse and worse at the time. And I think when you're doing these blind resumes, and this is something that when people do blind resumes a lot, Barstool famously does these a lot.
Yeah,
you cannot do these mid-season.
No.
You have to do this because you could say that, like, in the beginning of the season.
That Kansas State loss, that Nebraska loss was great.
Yes. Yeah. And, like, you would say that, like, this is arguably, you know, unfair at times because you don't know what the extent of it is. So Colorado has avoided Arizona State, it seems.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then the thing is, the Louisville loss for Clemson looked bad. And Georgia is a good team, but they got
Yeah, foot stomp.
smoked.
Yeah.
Smoked.
The no ranked teams I have a little bit of sympathy for because
Both those conferences so bad.
are so bad.
So bad.
That is so you can't win ranked games if there's no one ranked in your conference. That's not your fault.
Yeah.
You know,
So who'd you go with? And then we'll go on to the last one before we get into next week games.
I think I'd have to take a step back and say who has the better win.
Yeah, and I don't know. That's tough.
I'd have to go. Clemson had a more convincing middle part of the season before
Yeah.
dropping that one to LSU or
And Klubnik's, yeah, no, that's true. But the shame is, I think Colorado will get in and Clemson will miss because
yeah, no, I agree. But I think that if either of these teams lose their respective conferences, neither of them are in.
Okay, last one before we get to next week, and I like this one. Both okay. First team losses. Kansas. Their win was to Kansas State, who was ranked at the time, no longer ranked.
A top 15 win too.
Yep. And then Team B lost to Georgia Tech. Wins, no ranked wins. This one's tough because
you're missing one in there, Johnny. Team A also has a win against SMU, first team out.
Oh yeah, missing that. You're right.
I am a Miami hater. It goes to show that like the double standard of scheduling hard teams is being inadvertently. What's the opposite of proactive, Johnny?
I don't know.
But you listeners know
counteractive. I don't know.
Yeah, it is detrimental almost to these teams that are so Clemson throws this huge curveball out there and says, we want Georgia in the beginning of our season to show how good we are. Yeah. Like, this is a key matchup. Out of conference, you're facing the SEC. This would be, I feel like only Clemson really does it. They get foot stomped and everyone's holding them against it. Miami doesn't play anyone all year, right? Loses to Georgia Tech.
Yep.
Should have lost to Louisville. Louisville was – did you watch that Louisville game, side note?
No, I didn't.
In Miami, it was like 89 degrees, dude. Everyone was like legit. They looked like they just climbed 1,000 steps. Like they could not even keep their heads up. They were so tired. And Cam Moore did what he does best. This is so hard where I really, truly believe that you could argue the winner of the ACC should not be in the playoff unless it is – no, I really think that you could argue that they shouldn't be in the playoff.
It's really tough because like you look at these two resumes totally blind, and BYU with the win over SMU,
it
looks better right now than Miami, but Miami's the 8th ranked team in the country and BYU's the 14th.
That's a very valid point. They dropped one game against Kansas by 2 points in a tough environment against a very tough Kansas team. They get no credit for it.
They do control their fate. They win the Big 12 championship they're in, so they do control their fate.
I give that a lot of respect, but this shit just kind of pisses me off, though, because the more I think about it, it's like, yes, I'm going to full circle this. Everyone is hacking on Indiana not playing anyone, right? And they let's say they lose this Saturday, a very tough game. They don't make the Big 10 championship. They did not win their conference championship, and everyone's saying, oh, they should get out. Their schedule is the exact same as a really crappy ACC champion.
100%.
Like they're going to win. They're going to it's going to be SMU versus Miami, which is a tougher matchup. But if it's like Clemson, Miami, that's not even a remotely fun match. It's a fun matchup, but it's not a tough matchup.
No,
it's going to be held to such a high standard because they're the ACC. But this is where I differ from a lot of people on the conference championships. Is if you have truly a cruddy conference, the conference
you should be rewarded for winning that.
No. It doesn't mean anything, though, Johnny. No. Like the Big 12 champion this year, that means nothing to me.
No, it doesn't. And they're going to be in.
Like they shouldn't get more respect than Ohio State taking second or Oregon taking second.
No,
Oregon had an amazing year. If they dropped the game by literally a last-second midnight field goal against Ohio State, that Big 12 champion is going to be ranked higher than them, and that's bullshit.
It's crazy. And they have a bye. It's a wild.
And they have a bye and then follow that with a home game, correct?
Yeah, no, it's
that's sickening to me, and that's what I really think. And they've talked about it. That's like in all reality. Really quick, I want to go to next week's game. So I'm on a little bit of an angry tangent here.
Keep going.
If you were to rank your best teams in the playoffs, say like these are truly the best teams 1 through 5, who would it be? because I bet the conferences has nothing to do with it.
I'd go Oregon. I'd put Ohio State. I'd put Georgia when they're playing good. I'd put Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia. I think you got to put another SEC team in there,
Yeah.
like maybe Bama, and then I think maybe Penn State rounds that out.
Yeah, I see. I would go Oregon, Ohio State, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Penn State.
Yeah, I like that. But even Ole Miss lost to Kentucky and LSU. Like I don't even know.
It's so crazy though because I guess it goes to show with how important winning your conference championship is. But it's in not to get into politics here, but it's very similar to the Electoral College where these small schools are getting outrepresented the same way the small states are.
Yeah.
Like these BYU schools, excuse me, I didn't mean to say that. These Big 12 schools will never, ever have the same conference caliber as the Big 10 or the SEC, Johnny.
Yeah, no, 100%. I totally agree.
Winning it is going to be so much easier for them, and yet they're disproportionately ranked and disproportionately gifted these top 4 spots when they don't deserve them.
Yeah.
Right, like Miami wins the ACC, right? They went let's say even if they went undefeated, right? They don't win. They have maybe one ranked win, which would have been SMU in the championship. You're saying, oh, this is the 4th best team in the nation.
No
but then
way.
you have Ohio State, for instance, who, let's say in a different world, loses to Oregon, or same world, loses to Oregon, beats Penn State, loses to Oregon again. Loses to Oregon again. It should be ranked lower than them.
No. The whole yeah. I'm glad we have a 12-team playoff, but there's definitely some bugs that need to be.
I truly think, and I'm a firm believer of this, is that yes, record matters. And when a team is the word deserving gets thrown out a lot, and I wish I could take that word and throw it and never hear it again because it pisses me off. And I see where people are coming from, right? Most deserving. I think when a team is most deserving, it should be head and heels over any other team.
Yeah.
If there is any doubt in your mind that they are more deserving than another team, I think that you should eliminate that word from your vocabulary. If you're basing a team on getting into the playoff based off deserving, it should be truly gritty, tough wins where they beat teams in the 18 through 25 ranked areas.
Yeah.
And they were super gritty. They were away. They played out of conference games, so they showed their talent. They might have dropped one, but it was a really close game away, neutral field. That's where you can throw the word deserving around. But like BYU's season,
no, Big 12 and ACC are not deserving.
Not deserving, but like someone who is deserving, Ole Miss,
yeah,
Bama. Georgia might be my new Colorado, where I might not even talk about them anymore because I truly have.
That's awesome. I love that.
So moving to this week's games.
Yes.
I'm going to read them off again because I don't know if I mentioned them to our listeners. I'll give you a second to think on your picks. I hope you have your Cheesecake Pick Factory.
Oh, I got it.
Cheesecake Factory Pick of the Week. If you win this week, I'm going to concede and cut my losses there and start saving up. So we have Indiana is playing at Ohio State. Johnny, real quick, what's your opinion on the noon kickoff for that?
Hate it.
Do you think that you could cause enough ruckus for them to switch that going into next year?
Nope, because Fox has way more money than Johnny Jones. So
I don't know why Kirk Herbstreit's sinking his feet into Fox like that. I hate that.
What way is he pro doing kickoff?
He's a college game day guy, but he works for Fox Kickoff, I believe.
Yeah, so that's why I know Klatt. I love Klatt, but he works for Fox, so he's been very big pro doing kickoff. Yeah, no, Klatt's been very big. Yeah, because he's calling the games. Like he's not going to go against people at times his checks. I don't know. I was mad about Penn State Ohio State because I think that game was such a night game. That's such a wait all day for it. You get so excited to get all my snacks out, get all the food out. Let's watch this game at night. I think it sucks. The noon kickoff. Like I think the fact that Ohio State's going to finish the season with like 5 straight noon kickoffs, I think that sucks.
Yeah. The fact that they had noon kickoff against Purdue was silly. Ohio State is a 10-point favorite. I just want our listeners to know when we first talked, Johnny, they were a 14-point favorite, I believe, on Monday.
Yeah. Last time I checked this.
Coughlin, their offensive center, which is the only position. Their center is currently out. He tore his Achilles during practice.
Like the third offensive lineman they've lost.
Brutal. brutal. And he's an All-American. He's a really talented
He's
player.
very good.
Huge loss. What's crazy is that moved the line 4 points. We have Ole Miss is playing Florida. I believe this one's in Gainesville. A little bit of a trap game for Ole Miss. They're an 11-point favorite. That's a tough one. We're not going to talk about it yet, but I just want to get that one out there. We have our friend Max Brosmer at Minnesota. Is hosting Penn State. Penn State's an 11-point favorite. They've been taking care of business. Took care of business at Purdue and then Washington prior. Notre Dame versus Army, a game that I had circled in the beginning of the year that I was really excited for. My excitement has kind of dwindled. Notre Dame is playing really, really good football. 14.5 seems too little. Vanderbilt is headed to Death Valley. LSU is a 7.5 point favorite. That's exclusivity. That's exclusively based on being at home. They should not be that big. Texas A&M is heading to Auburn. This line makes no sense. It makes so little sense that I feel like you and I should group up every dollar we have, sell our cars, our boats, and put it on A&M. They're in a 2.5 point favorite on that one, Johnny. Then Colorado's biggest test of the second half of the season at Kansas. Kansas coming off a really big win, a gritty win, a win that, people had somewhat predicted, but I don't know if they have enough in juice in them. Colorado's a field goal favorite, 2.5 point favorite in that game.
Okay, where we start? Indiana, Ohio.
Start at top. Indiana, OSU starts at 12 kickoff. Indiana's gearing up, coming off a bye week, which is pretty advantageous for them. Ohio State's having a tough little stretch worth of plays or worth of games. They're a 10-point favorite.
Okay, I really hope Indiana wins. I think Indiana's a great team. They'll get in the playoff. I think they're a great team. That being said, I'm taking Ohio State. I know it's a lot of points. I wish I wasn't. This whole week I've just been really trending, and I'm really scared Ohio State's going to beat the crap out of Indiana. I think this is a classic. I know that they're very banged up in the O-line, but, I think Chip Kelly is going to dial it up. I think that offense is so talented. They've got 2 stud running backs. They've got a bunch of stud receivers. I don't like Will Howard. I've been very vocal about that, but I think that and
what if Indiana somehow, some ways, Johnny, cuts off the run and makes Will Howard play? Is your opinion changed? Like if Will Howard needs to
no, because I think Jeremiah Smith and Emeka, they're so good. They're so good. Like I think they're gonna get what they want on the outside against Indiana, and I think that will then in turn open up the run. Like I think
that Ohio State. I think you're a tad backwards on that. I think Ohio State's actually going to struggle on the run, and when you struggle on the run and you start leading on the pass so much that it's actually tougher to throw the ball. With that being said, Emeka, Ibuka, Jeremiah Smith, and I thought they had one more wide receiver.
They do. I don't remember his name.
Indiana. I don't see, as much as I want Indiana to keep this close, I have a feeling it's going to be, Ohio State wins by the first quarter by 3, the second quarter by 8, the third quarter by 5.
Yeah.
Just like that, it's a 22-point game. I'm going to pick Ohio State at -10 with you. I liked it a lot more when it was -14. I liked Indiana a lot more when it was -14.
Yeah, me too. I can see them winning by like 13.
Yep. Then we have Ole Miss is heading to Florida. Florida's coming off its best win in probably 2 years against LSU. Single-handedly put Brian Kelly on the hot seat. It quite literally took the hot seat off Billy Napier and put it on Brian Kelly. Does Ole Miss have anything to worry about?
What was the spread?
-11.
At Ole Miss?
It is in Gainesville.
In Gainesville, no. I just think Florida used all their magic up last week. I think Ole Miss, they're gunning for that playoff spot. I think they see that they're in a tough spot because they might not necessarily make the SEC championship game, and there's going to be a lot of 2-loss SEC teams. I think they really need to make a statement this week. Yeah. And I think if they come out like they did against Georgia, they can beat anyone in the SEC. So I think they're going to go. I think they'll probably win by 2 scores. I can see this like a 35 to like 21 game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think 11's a little bit too little. I do like my Florida, but I just can't take them in this spot. Ole Miss is at the finish line, right? Like, you remember that time that we ran a 5K together and I beat you by that?
Yeah, I do. I do remember that.
So it's one of those things where they can see the finish line in one more small hill to do. And unlike me, they won't quit. And, so I think that this game could be a little bit closer. It's a game that I don't think I would bet just because, they just got to win. They got to get down. They got to get the W in the column. And I do think that they cover, and I think it's a late cover. I think that they're probably winning the game by 7 majority of the game, and then late they get an extra touchdown, win by 14. We have Minnesota's hosting Penn State. Penn State's an 11-point favorite. Obviously, our friend Max Bosner is playing really, really well. We want continued success with him. They don't have the offensive power to keep up with Penn State.
No, I totally agree. I love the way Minnesota has been trending, and Brosman's really made his case to play on Sundays next year. But I just think Penn State's just a little too talented on both sides of the ball. I like them by, I'd say, like 16 this week.
Yeah, I could very well see this game being one of those where it never really seems that close, right? Like a 14-0 after the first and a 20
Yeah,
after the second. I think Penn State is a really, really good team. Their loss against Ohio State really shouldn't have been a loss, in my opinion.
yeah.
Back to that, I've reflected on that game a lot. It's really, really not sitting well with me. They should have lost that game, Johnny. And
No, they shouldn't. Absolutely not. I said that on the pod. Absolutely not.
They had the opportunity twice on the goal line to score. They threw an interception, which was an amazing play. I will never
Crazy play. That was wild.
But I will continuously blame coaching for that.
Yeah, rightfully so. Rightfully so. But I think this week,
I think that's
too much.
What's crazy about those games is you lose some of your credibility when you lose those games, Johnny, and it reflects the spread in your predictions moving forward.
Yeah.
Like they smoked Purdue and they smoked Washington, and Purdue they were a huge favorite against. But Washington, I think they're only a 9-point favorite.
Yeah, which was so disrespectful.
It's insulting.
So insulting.
And they shouldn't be. I think this line should be closer to 18. I think that's We had Notre Dame versus Army. Army is currently undefeated. One of the last few. We have Oregon, Army. We have
Indiana.
I said Oregon. Yep. Notre Dame is a 14.5-point favorite. They're kind of rolling. Like I said, they put up 28 unanswered against Virginia. Kind of stalled in the first quarter last week, but then really found their wind. Put up 28, let up 14 late. Played really good. They're going to get that run game going. Their highlight, typical Notre Dame, their defense is crazy good.
So good. The defense is so good. This team's un-American, but I'm going with Notre Dame. I want Army to win just because I think they're such a great story. But Notre Dame's got the ball rolling. That defense is so stout, and I just think Army's going to be undersized, and they're not going to have.
What's your score prediction for this one, Johnny?
We're going to say 45-14.
Yeah, that's better than what I think. I think 31-10 is a Notre Dame victory, 21-point victory. I would not be surprised if Army gets the ball first, drives 88 yards in 9.5 minutes and scores. And then after that, my first collegiate football game at the FBS level was Army-Navy.
That's awesome.
Navy was undefeated. They were 8-0 that year in 2015. And Notre Dame put their foot down and stopped that season. Vanderbilt heading to LSU. Vanderbilt's a team that, on the opposite of Penn State, keeps getting disrespected for some reason. Obviously coming off a tough loss a couple weeks ago against South Carolina, but LSU stinks. Why are they a touchdown favorite?
It's crazy. I'm taking Vandy. I think LSU, they've got such a bad vibes in that locker room right now, and I think Vandy is a team that they've dropped a couple, but I think they're always live in a game like this. Diego Pavia is a winner, and I think they find a way this week.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that they're truly a winning team.
Nussmeier is playing bad too.
He's playing really bad, and like you said, they've lost the initiative to play at LSU. I think that Vandy would love nothing more than to ruin this season. Like they did Auburn. That win against Auburn. They didn't win didn't ruin their season, but they definitely put the nail in the coffin against Auburn on that one.
Oh, yeah.
I could see a loss against Vandy here would crush Brian Kelly, and I would truly not be surprised if he got shit canned prior to heading to the showers that day. We have Texas A&M's heading to Auburn. Speaking of Auburn, Auburn's a crappy team.
Weird line.
They are struggling. Is there something I'm missing?
No, Vegas knows something. I'm going to take A&M because it's -2.5. I don't like how close this is because I think A&M is going to kill Auburn. I don't know why this is.
I don't. For the life of me, I don't understand it. I'm looking up. There's got to be something I'm missing. Obviously, they played really well last week against New Mexico State. Not saying much, but dropping third.
You muted yourself. You muted yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you just mute. Yeah, you're good.
No,
you're good. No worries. Keep. You gotta unmute yourself.
Same exact thing. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You can't hear me?
No. Hold on. Same thing. Can you leave and come back? Sorry about that. A little bit of technical difficulties here. Yeah, I'm looking at A&M's schedule, Johnny, and there's nothing that stands out to me besides that South Carolina loss that's like that pressing. 38-point win or 35-point win against Texas A&M beat New Mexico State. Obviously, New Mexico State's nothing impressive, but 38 points is pretty good. In 3 short weeks ago, they beat LSU. A crazy good win. I don't understand this. Auburn has done absolutely nothing to garner my attention to say this is a close game.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really hammering Texas A&M here. I might just responsibly put a huge amount of money on this because I don't get where that line stands at 2.5. I just think Texas
No,
A&M.
I think that it kind of depends on the quarterback situation a little bit, but this team, their running back, I don't know if he's back yet, but this one I just don't understand. And then lastly, so I'm assuming we're both taking those ones so far. You and I, Johnny, have picked every single one together. I know we will vary on the next one. We have Colorado as a 2.5-point favorite against Kansas.
I'm taking Colorado.
There it is.
I think I'm gonna pick against it just because I'm nervous at Kansas this week, and I want Kansas to win because I really like Lance Leipold, but
yeah,
I think Kansas. It kind of like what team was I saying about it earlier? Was it who got an upset last week? The Ole Miss, the Florida game. No, I just think Kansas used all their magic last week, and I think Colorado is just going to be better. I think they see the path to the playoff, and I think
same thing as A&M. They're just they're 100 yards away essentially to the playoff. I'm gonna take Kansas. I really think that Kansas was a good team this year. They just had a really bad start. I think that they're warming up at the exact same time. Blindly, this spread should be Colorado's -6.5.
That's what I don't. Yeah, that's what I don't
like. Which
makes
me think Kansas.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. It truly is.
That's funny. This one game will decide who wins the week, you or me.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that or we each. Yeah, you could go.
Or we just
what's crazy is that you could go 1 for 6, or we could go 6 for 7 or 5 for 6.
Yeah,
which is funny.
Okay.
But hey, good luck. I know that you
are
at Thanksgiving dinner.
What's your cheesecake?
Oh, Jesus. I gotta go with Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt +7.
I like that. I almost picked that. I like that.
What do you got, Johnny? Come on, something small. Something shit.
I got Pitt +8.5 versus Louisville. Both teams coming off bad losses.
That makes me feel a lot better knowing that you will lose this week.
I don't know. Louisville looked bad last week. They lost to Stanford.
Louisville's best is a lot better than Pitt's best.
I know, but I don't need to win. I just need to come close,
keep it close. Keep it close. Well, Johnny, have a good Thanksgiving Saturday. Next week we'll do a fun Thanksgiving episode Tuesday night. Tune in. Best of luck. You will be missed this weekend while I'm grilling sausages and whatnot.
Enjoy it.
We will talk more next week.
Enjoy it. See ya.